Hey, this is the Blind Ambition podcast with your buddy Jack Kelly. And today, I wanted to talk about a topic that's been coming up a lot. Just to give you some color, when I started working, you'd show up to the office. There's like no hybrid. There's no working from home. That just didn't happen. At least it didn't happen in the New York area. So you got to work and you did your job, right? You came there, you did your job. If your boss said jump, you have to say, all right, how high do I have to jump, boss? What do I have to do? And it was really pretty strict in a way. You had your job, you had your boss, you had your supervisor, and like that was, that's the deal. Fast forward, the mores and things change over time. And it seems that over time, the office obviously changed a lot, particularly with COVID, with remote work, hybrid work, work wherever you want. Um, Companies were much more generous with how they were trying to help with well-being for their employees, how to take care of them. But at the same time, lots of layoffs, lots of problems. So one of the things that has grown and emerged within the work environment is this: bring your whole self to the office, bring your whole self to work, which in a way I'm not even really sure exactly what they're talking about when they're doing that, because I've always thought that when you go to the office and you do your work, at least from my perspective, from being an executive recruiter and running a search firm for 25 plus years, I always found that my job was easier, my life was easier when I was authentic and genuine. When I first started recruiting, it was interesting. Like, it was in New York, recruiting for Wall Street professionals, high-end executives, and you'd have a lot of these guys and a lot of these women that they would act like, oh, I'm this tough, cool New York bro recruiter, or I'm this tough, hardcore chick recruiter. And it just seemed so unreal. And when I first started recruiting and I would listen to these people, I'm like, this doesn't sound right. And back then, it was very common, even though they were your competitors, you go out for drinks and you get to know them, you get to know the clients and deal with them. So you would then get a sense, in real life, they weren't being that hardcore, tough, exterior. It was different. So I found for myself personally, when I was soliciting job orders or recruiting somebody, I was always trying to be my most authentic self, my, genuine self, just be me. And I figure if people want to work for me because of me, that's great. And if for any reason they didn't want to work with me because I don't, I wouldn't know why they wouldn't. I'm such a nice, awesome guy, but it happens. So that to me always rang true. But now it seems when you bring your authentic self to the office, unfortunately, somehow it's tied in with social issues, with politics, and all these other kind of things that kind of make it weird. So that you get nervous that if I don't call Christine and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to refer to you as Zar, Zed, Zuz, whatever it may be," I'm going to be called into the HR department and get chastised or maybe even fired because I'm not respecting those pronouns. Or you might even find some companies, and you've probably all seen this on social media, where they'll say, "Hey, if I see somebody with she, them, they, I'm not hiring that person because I know that's going to be difficult. And they're going to have trouble and they're going to complain and it's just going to be a big pain in the ass." So this whole, maybe you could help me out, Christine. What do you see when you think of, bring your whole self to the office? What does that mean to you?
To me, bringing your whole self or your authentic self, that's your personal brand. And that's going to be the thing that separates you among the crowd. And then
Mhm.
to go back to what you were saying before in networking, I think being yourself is the best way to form meaningful relationships, which is, important for professional success and growth.
But what if, okay, but what if your, true self, your
Mhm.
authentic self sucks? What if you're a shitty person? Seriously, what?
Yeah,
I mean, not everyone's a good person. Like a lot of people are good people. So
yeah.
what if you're a jerk? What if you're like that rock star jerk, right? You're like the guy or the woman who could just sell like crazy and bring in all the revenue, but you're like impossible to deal with. Now, do you let that person be their true self by being an arrogant jerk? Or do you have to say, sorry, you're gonna maybe not make as much money in your sales quota because you got to tone it down.
I think in order to bring your authentic self to work, the best environment to do so is where your values, beliefs, and missions align. So if there's that dissonance, you're not going to feel safe bringing your true self. So I think those rock star jerks work well
Mhm.
in those like high powered situations. So you kind of know going into it, like, this is what it is, that's who that person is. And then you're going to play to that person's strengths.
But how about this? How about what do you do? And we've all seen this. You have this, look at me person. It's always look at me. I'm the main character syndrome. Everything, there's always a drama. There's always something, and people coming over to their desk. Oh, I heard this happened to you. That's so horrible. Oh no, that's terrible. Or you have this not narcissistic person that you have to deal with, or you have this toxic person, but they're like, well, that's who I am. Yeah, you ever get that? You ever see that, Chrissy? Well, they'll excuse their horrible
Yeah.
behavior, just saying, oh, that's how I am,
Those
man.
are the worst people. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think even though you're bringing your authentic self,
Yeah.
you still bring the best version of yourself.
Yeah, but some of them don't have the best version. There's this one guy who I know, and you know, he would say like the dumbest things. He'd say the most inappropriate things,
Mhm.
but then he would be like, "No, I'm just kidding." But that's me,
Yeah, it's
and
just a
it's like,
joke.
dude, like that. All right, that's just me. But you're offending everybody, and you're
Mhm.
annoying. That like what? That's your personal self, your whole self to work. But like, it's irritating everybody.
Yeah,
Maybe you should say like, if everyone's irritated by you, maybe you shouldn't bring your whole self to work.
yeah.
Am
I
I
think
wrong?
if you bring your authentic self doesn't mean that all of a sudden you don't have boundaries or like you're like not a civil person. So I think it's like your authentic self within parameters. Like you still want to honor like, workplace conduct and all that stuff.
I mean, do you also think that it's one of those things that companies always say these things because they want to ingratiate themselves with the employees and say, look how much we care. But yet, when you do it, then they come down on you. Like that example I gave about, hey, I just tell jokes. So what do you want from me? It's your fault if you don't get him. Like, what happens then? I mean, do you have to say like, no, you suck. Stop it. You're fired, or do you have to just deal with it because now they're saying, hey, you got to bring your whole self to work.
I think there's still, like I said before, like you still have to operate within
Yeah.
parameters of like what's right to do in the office. Like even before you mentioned like the social aspect, like there are people who can't leave their politics at the door,
Hmm.
but there's still a way to like constructively talk about politics. You can organize um at your workplace in still a civil manner as opposed to
Hmm.
like all out fighting and brawling about politics.
Yeah, politics is a big thing now, right? Where
Mhm.
it's you walk in a tightrope because
Mhm.
you don't know like what the other person's thinking. Can I share you my like litmus test? What I do?
Yeah.
Because Christine and I have different philosophies, which is cool because this way we could, each one share like our thoughts. So I tend to be more conservative leaning, more to the right. And this is funny. This is hilarious. So like I don't know if you guys could relate to this. You meet somebody you're not sure, and what I find out most people, for me, it's really weird because I don't know, maybe they think, oh, Jack's a nice guy, he's a great guy, so he must be, he's on our side, right? He's on our side because he's smart, he's nice, good looking, charming, charismatic, awesome, wealthy,
Humble,
handsome,
humble.
all those kind of things, humble. So they just assume, oh, he's on our side. And then like you might say something and they're like, ooh, he's not on our side. He sucks. But what happens is this. Here's a trick. So for you people who are on the right, who are conservatives, you just kind of throw out something. And then you got to watch their body language and you got to watch like, you know, how they react. And then you throw something else. And then what happens, you hit something and you realize, all right, we're on the same side. And then there's this on both sides, this kind of relief, like, oh, oh, now we could actually talk. This is great. So, so this is a little tip for, when you get into these instances and you're not sure what, and this holds true not only in the office, but this, out of the office. Now, Chris, now you have different, you lean more towards, the left side. How do you
Mhm,
find out and feel out to make sure that, let's say, you don't get stuck with a manager or boss or a coworker who doesn't have the same, politics as you?
mhm.
And how do you navigate that
You
at the
either
office?
you either just avoid it altogether,
Yeah.
or you're like, "Oh, man, November 5th was crazy," and
And
based on,
you just leave it very vague. Is that what it is? You just
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. So they'll be like, "Yeah, I can't believe you won by a landslide," or just based on their response, you could kinda gauge where they are.
and then you see what they say, and then you just take it from there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, what other things like now, if somebody comes into work, right, and they're completely over the top, flamboyant, look at me. And when I say flamboyant, I'm not using that as a whistle for anything. No, just like there are people like that. And I know you're saying, oh, you're talking about someone gay. No, not at all. Some people are just so
Extra.
dramatic,
Yeah.
so extra. So like, all right, what happens with those people who are just so everything is extra, everything is a challenge, everything is a problem, everything is, and that's their real self. Like
Mhm.
when does that stop? Or it doesn't stop? Or do you just have to humor that person, but
No,
you're miserable?
I think if that person is toxic to your culture, you gotta get them out of there no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to look at what value they're bringing and then just whether or not they're toxic. Because I think when people bring their authentic self, it should still be an authentic self that I think like inspires other people. Like I like on the podcast when
Hmm.
our guests are able to be their true selves and they're willing to delve deeper and not put on this
Hmm.
facade. They're open about their failures and like their biggest career regrets and opportunities they've missed out on. And I think so many people can learn from other people's lessons. So that's the kind of like authenticity that I like. You know, it shows like some maybe some weakness. I think in being your authentic self, it doesn't have to be your perfect self. It just has
Hmm.
to show you flaws and all.
That makes a lot of sense, you know? And how do you think it's going to play out moving forward? Especially, a lot of things are changing. Do you think there'd be a lot of changes within the office that would reflect, the change from going, from Biden's administration to Trump's? Do you think that would be
Mhm.
a big shift and create issues at the office?
We may see more companies just making it a policy where like, hey,
Hmm.
have to be apolitical here. I think it was Mark Andreessen that said, leave your full self at home and act like a professional and grown up. And then I think once you know where your company stands, you can decide, or even a potential employer, you can then decide, is this the place where I want to work? Like, are they contributing to a cause that hurts myself or people I love? You know, because sometimes to me, when they're like, leave your full self at the door, it's like, leave your morals and leave your
Hmm.
at the door. And I don't think that you should ever lose that because without that, you're not going to have any job satisfaction. And then also, I think it's your true self that's going to spark innovation. I think the foundation of innovation is solving a problem. And in discussing that, that's
Mhm.
inherently vulnerable because it's saying, hey, I don't like this. Let's find a solution and change that. And every major tech breakthrough once started out as like a crazy idea. So imagine those people are just their most authentic selves, that they're willing to go down that rabbit hole and explore that crazy idea, and honoring like their curiosity and drive to solve a problem.
You know, to just piggyback on that, two things I was thinking of.
Mhm.
One, Brian Armstrong, founder of Coinbase, uh, somewhat early on put out this memo basically saying, "Hey, we're just not going to talk about politics and these social issues, and no hard feelings. If that's what you want to do, that's fine, but you can't do it here, and we'll
Mhm.
just work out a package for you." So I wonder if companies might start doing that too, to say, "Hey, if you really feel so strongly about whatever issue it is that's part of your true self, maybe make it fair. Okay, that's I might not belong at this company and find one that does suit me."
Mhm. Consumers are doing that with like the products that they're buying. There are sites that say like, "Hey, this board member contributed to this cause, or this company donated to this." So I think job seekers may be also doing that more, because I think it's important to, one, not just find a company that aligns with your values, but then also gives you the space to be your authentic self. Because I think in being your authentic self, you get to advocate for yourself. Because if you feel
Mm.
like you're being taken advantage of in like an office environment, that's not going to sit right with you. And to feel it and not say anything, you would just be masking your hurt and disappointment. But if you're tapped into who you are, it'll give you the confidence to say something.
I love that. It makes so much sense. And I'll add to what you were saying about, tech and innovation.
Hmm.
The people who are their true self sometimes, within software engineering, software development, what have you, they're kind of like, to most people, you look at them at times when they're creating something, and you're like, "You're crazy."
Hmm.
You know, when I was a little kid, your parents said, "Don't go into a car with a stranger." But now, yeah, go into a car, a Uber or Lyft with a stranger, and that's fine. But it's
Yeah.
so bizarre that you have to have that mindset. Like I had that mindset of like, I, going into an Uber or Lyft, I don't know, it's weird. Now the next step is going to a driverless car. We're going to have somebody on our
Hmm.
podcast, I think this week or next week, talking about the driverless cars. So now you're going not only into a stranger's car, you go into a stranger's car with no one else in there. So I think to bring your whole self, if you're a builder, a creator, you need, I guess, to flourish, even if they're kind of that a jerk or a weirdo or just out there,
Hmm.
you need to bring that person's whole self in, because those are the people who are creating these new companies and building stuff and making it, literally changing the world. So I guess that's what you referred to before, I believe, which makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Because those are the people who have already come to like a place of self acceptance. So they have the confidence to go out and
Mhm,
pitch those crazy ideas. They're not bogged down by putting on this facade. Like when you have to like wear a mask, you just feel so
mhm.
burnt out by the end of the day. So these people are not bogged down by the facade. They figure out who, and they don't have to figure out who they want to be, or like find the most appropriate version of themselves in like each moment, because that's just so tiring.
Well,
And
this is great. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, and I think also just being your authentic self, it's like some people feel like they have to hide the fact that like they're a parent or like a caretaker.
Mm.
But then it's being your true self, your authentic self, that that's how employers shape policies. Because if they don't know parents are struggling, like then they're not going to implement like maybe flexible policies for you guys. So then I think being your true authentic self, it's not suffering in silence, and it's kind of having the confidence to like ask for support when needed.
Absolutely. That's so great. So I'm so glad we were able to have this conversation, because what we're trying to do with the Blind Ambition podcast is be real about and talking about like what really goes on. A lot of podcasts, go on for 3 hours and they're going over these issues that it doesn't really impact your life. They're talking about, rock stars and whatever, people like in a completely different world. But here, for people who just are trying to navigate their life and their career and need advice and need guidance and not sure what to do, that's what I think we're trying to help out with, to give the advice, the guidance, um, not only with the podcast, with our writings and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate you watching and listening. And if you all have a topic you want to discuss or something that you're really interested and passionate about that you think would be helpful for people to learn about, hit us up. Hit us up. Always open to get viewpoints from other people. And also, if anybody in the audience thinks they'll be a good guest to come on, that'd be awesome. Let us know. So thank you very much for watching. I think this is kind of a really interesting topic, and it's going to be interesting, I think, as the administration, the new administration takes place, to see how people react with the differences. And then maybe what you do, Christine, is have like 6 months later a
Mhm.
follow-up podcast just to see if there's any difference. It might not be. It could be just business as usual, or it could be different. It'd be interesting. So maybe we could kind of put a pin in it and see what happens and how this plays out.
I can't even imagine 6 months from now, because just look at the first week of December and what is happening.
Like, well, all right, so what, we have what? Syria, we have, like, I don't even know, like, yeah, that's maybe another podcast. What the hell just happened? But maybe we'll save that for later. So
Yeah.
thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And yeah, check out we have about 150 podcasts. Check them all out. We're going to do a whole lot more. Check them out as we go along. And thank you for the support, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.